Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to start off this 10th anniversary distinguished lecture series. And there's no better person to start the series than my good friend and colleague for several decades now, Professor Ashok Gulati. Many of you know Ashok Gulati's name and fame. Some of you may have even met him in various places. Ashok Ashok got his PhD from Delhi University, and he's worked in various places throughout his career. He started at the National Center for Applied Economic Research as the director there. Then he was with the Institute of Economic Growth in Delhi as a professor, and moved from there to Washington, DC as the director of the Markets and Trade Division of the International Food Policy Research Institute. Then became the head of the South Asia office of ICRIER. And from there, the government stole him and made him the chairman of the Cost and Price Commission. And those of you who know that, that's the commission that sets the minimum support prices, etc., and price policy for the country. And then after that, he's in this current position at ICRIER as a NABARD chair professor. He's also on the board of the Reserve Bank of India and so many other boards. If anybody wants advice on agriculture policy in India, they go to Ashok. Whether it's a prime minister or a state chief minister or even normal people like us, we all go and say, Ashok, what do you think about this and that? And I'm really happy he's here to tell us what he thinks about what's happening to food policy and repurposing support for sustainable food systems. Ashok will talk for 45 minutes, after which we'll have an open discussion, and then we'll break for lunch. Ashok.
Great. Thanks, Prabhu. And good morning to everyone here and those who are online. It's a pleasure to be here and share some of my thoughts. I think last time I visited was perhaps 2 decades back here. And it's good to revive some of those. In policy particularly, we say you can't count more than 3. If you tell more than 3 things to a policymaker, you may not register. So I'm going to use that formula, only 3 things to talk about. What is the nature of India's food system in India, how it has evolved over years. But the real heart of research and policy and understanding is what is the nature of support through different policies that is given currently. And there are some empirical estimates that we have churned out over the last 20 years. And why do we need to repurpose now, realign those, keeping in mind our challenges that are going to confront India, particularly over the next 10, 20, even 30 years up to 2050. So that's broadly the outline in which I'll be talking about. But since I'm going to talk more about policy issues, we must remember in India, for a policy maker, it's a very tight rope walk because you have to balance the interests of both the farmers on one side, the producers, and the consumers, because when the policy started off, India had a lot of poverty in the country. So if the prices go up, consumers are on the road, and every effort is there to bring the prices down. If prices crash, farmers are up in revolt because they want higher prices, consumers want lower prices, and that's the dilemma that policymakers continuously face. And that's something what we are going to empirically map, because the reaction can be very short-term. Sometimes the foot is on the accelerator, and sometimes the foot is on the brake. Now, how far you are moving in that direction, are you going forward or backward or stagnant? where we are, that is a challenge to see as a researcher standing at a little distance, what is the nature of that support that you have given to the farmers and to consumers on the other side. So where is and now future challenges, making food systems sustainable. And that's where the climate change issues, but also for a country like India, nutritional issues are very paramount. And that's what we are going to talk about. India's food system, basically, earlier we had been thinking of production system, the marketing processing system, and the consumption system. But two more lines have been added now and needs to be added as we go forward. That is environmental sustainability, and also whether we are removing our malnutrition, some of the numbers I'll share with you. But if you have to change the system and the farming practices in the country, one thing is clear, farmer is not going to change the behavior unless his or her income goes up. That's the bottom line. If you say you do this because it is good for nature and sustainable, but his income goes down by 10%, forget about it. That's a non-starter. So whatever they are getting, they must get better than that if you want these external other factors to be taken care of. So that's the visualization that we have of the food system. Now, what I said, I would say to some extent, the objectives of the policymakers are also conflicting in nature. Farmers, they need to give remunerative prices, good prices, so that they have good profitability and they can be incentivized to produce more, higher productivity. And there are various policy instruments to do that. One of the instruments that its genesis in 1965, I'll come to that, why it was evolved, is the minimum support price. My PhD during the time when I was at your age was actually on price policy. Never thought one day I'll have to come back on that table as a chairman of that prices commission to fix these prices. So minimum support prices is one thing that we will look at, but there are other policy instruments. Essential Commodities Act, Agriculture Produce and Marketing Committee Act. And these are the policy instruments through which government in a way calibrates the pricing scenario for the producers. And then this is the incentive structure. Sometimes there are breaks in between. And then there are incentives given through input subsidies. Fertilizer subsidy. This year, 22-23 financial year, we are going to touch roughly $30 billion of fertilizer subsidy to the farmers. What it is doing to environment and other things, we'll see later. But what is the budgetary support that is being provided? There is also an income, direct income support that is given to the farmers. In fact, on 17th of October, the Prime Minister gave another tranche to the farmers, 6,000 rupees a year to a farming family they give. Then there are general support services, which is more into agriculture research, infrastructure, those types of services. And then there are food subsidies. The biggest subsidy for the last 2 years in particular, literally when the COVID started, India has been giving free food almost. 10 kilograms per person per month. A family of 5 means 50 kilograms of staples, rice or wheat or combination. Every month they get almost free food for the last 2 years to more than 800 million people. More than 800 million people. That has been going on, and it will continue till December end. After that, it may come down half, because under the Food Security Act, we have at least 5 kilograms everyone should get, 800 million plus. That's about 67% of the population under the Act, which roughly today is around 60% population is being covered. We'll see what is good about that and what is bad about that, and how that is opening up many challenges. Okay, How do we estimate this support? Because if we want to re-estimate or reorient that, first is we need to know where India stands and what is the level and the structure of support. So there is a market price support, which is given through prices. How do you measure that? There is a standard methodology that OECD has adopted, and it monitors for 52 countries around the world every year what is the level of support to the producers. That's called the producer subsidy equivalence. Earlier it used to be called, when the first measurement came, that was from USDA. Now that was transferred to OECD. It's called producer support estimates. Basically, you are comparing national prices, which the farmers get in their mandis perhaps, with the import parity or export parity of that particular commodity, depending upon whether you are a net exporter of that commodity or a net importer. Presuming that if there was no trade restriction, there were no market restrictions, then farmers would have got that price if there was a free trade. And actually what they are getting, if they are getting more than what the free trade scenario would have given, then they are protected, and that is a positive support. But if they are getting less than what they could have got, for example, when you put export controls, what you are trying to do is suppress the prices, then that's a negative market support, right? When you say traders cannot hold stocks, what are you trying to do is creating a glut in the market. Immediately after harvest, the prices will go down, so farmers will get less. This is what Essential Commodities Act acts as. When you suspend the futures markets, these are all policy instruments to suppress prices. But if you are protecting and giving a high tariff wall or not allowing imports, then that is a protection. So you have to net out the two, what the farmers are getting vis-a-vis what they could have got if there was a free trade, both on import side, export side, and no controls in the domestic marketing anywhere the farmer can sell to anybody in the country. Budgetary support, as I said, it is in the budget. How much of subsidy, fertilizer subsidy you are giving, how much of income support you are giving, or how much of subsidy on agriculture credit you are giving, or crop insurance you are giving, those are all budgetary items. They are added as positive support. Market support can be positive or negative, whereas budgetary support is basically positive. You have to add the two to get what is the level of support that the producers are getting. And that's a major exercise. You have to do commodity by commodity, looking at the international price scenario, like with the like, and that's a major exercise that we did over 2 years with OECD. A team of about 8-9 people worked on that. And that's how those estimates were generated on a methodology which is common for all these 52 countries, so that we can compare with other countries where India stands. Let's see what is the nature of support. The red on the positive side is the budgetary support, all these subsidies that are coming up. Whereas the market price support is in negative. That means farmers have not been getting the prices they could have got if there were no controls on domestic marketing or international marketing trade. Then farmers would have got better prices. When you net out the two, add and as a percentage of the gross farm receipts, that's what the OECD methodology is all about, then you can see from a little positive in 2000, 1.8, it has gone down to minus all this 8.1. Now, even now, there is export ban on wheat, very restrictive practices, rice also. These are bigger commodities. So there is an export restriction on that, basically to control inflation. That means to help the consumer side, right? So the conclusion that we draw from this empirical estimation of 2 years and a team of 8-9 people, is that Indian farmers have been net taxed implicitly. This is negative support, because negative price support overweighs the budgetary support that you are giving. If you look at the countries, you look at where different countries are. Look at these countries where they are, the support level, and India is here in negative. There are only 2 countries in negative, Vietnam and India. All others are positive support. This is the OECD average of positive support. Now, when you look at the consumer side, because there is a negative support here, that gets reflected as a positive support for consumers. But on top of that, you have food subsidies, the biggest $36 billion being spent on food subsidy per year. So that adds up. So India's consumer subsidy in the world is highest, whereas in the world, most of the developed countries, consumers pay and farmers get positive support. Consumers have negative support. Whereas in India, so their policy at present is heavily biased towards actually the consumers, the typical consumer bias. I'll come down to that. We did this exercise from 1960 onwards earlier with the World Bank, Kim Anderson and Will Martin's book. You can find that details from 60 onwards. So broad structure is that because of poverty, perhaps, there was a consumer bias in the system, in the policies, and farmers were not allowed to get the best prices they could have got. Because exporting, they say, oh, you are exporting grains in a poor country, what will happen to our own people? You know, so that's how it's all suppressed. Look at 3-4 major countries. So India is in a negative, green one. China, look at absolute terms, it started off almost with a similar policy that we had. And as China developed, look at today, they are having the highest $289 billion of positive support to their farmers. No wonder their productivity will be much higher. The incentives are there, their fertilizer consumption 400 kilograms plus per hectare. So you will have higher productivity, everything, because the incentive structures are very much favorable to that. This is the OECD average, and this is where the US is. But these are the absolute figures. Look at the percentage to the gross value of output of farm receipts. That's the methodology. And you find that today, China has got up where OECD average is. Almost 16.2% of the gross value of output of China is subsidized, whereas India, last 5 years, if you see, it's still negative. Okay. So the issue of this pricing, trade policy, marketing policies is critical. If the farmers have to get better support, we have to free up this. And that is what one of the objectives of the farm laws were. And there was all uproar in the country on that, and they had to be withdrawn. I have some numbers here, especially with the minimum support prices, which the government gives. What is the reality behind that? Because people feel it is the minimum support prices. Basically, they cater to 2 major commodities, wheat and rice, and only to 4, 5, 6 states. The rest of the country, and I'll show how a particular country. So it's quite possible on the all India level, they may be taxed implicitly, negative support, but for states like Punjab, they could be highly positive, because that's where the support system operates much better than in Bihar or Assam, where the prices will be 30%, 25% below MSP, because there is no structure of procurement and all that. Okay. much of this estimation, anybody who is interested in this, you have a 300-page report of OECD and ICRIER that we did, all these estimates and the methodology details and what is compared with what. And there is a book also which gives India in relation to other countries. You can see that. Let me come to the second part, that's the food system, how it has evolved and how those policies are interlocked with the historical legacy of the food system. If you look at the period, India had been, I should give you a little background of this wheat and rice and the staples particularly. The public distribution system, the rationing of it started off literally at the time of Second World War. But in 1943, India had infamous Bengal famine, in which estimates are anywhere from 1.5 million to 3 million people died of starvation. And that brought the system to control prices for the consumers. It was not as much a drop in the production as it was because prices shot up and people could not afford, and therefore the starvation deaths led. And then you have Chinese case, 1958 to 61, the great leap forward, when 30 million people died of starvation. 30 million people died of starvation. These two mega countries with most of the population, more than 1/3, 35% of the population on this globe, had terrible stories on the food front. And that's what made their policies first, consumer bias. But as China developed, you can see where China went. And hopefully India perhaps will go in that direction in the years to come, but we still have some challenge on the poverty front. Right. But the biggest challenge was making food available. We had lived, those who know, seniors here, PL 480, 1965, 64, 65, 65, 66, India had 2 continuous drought years and the country was literally living from ship to mouth situation. And that's when this minimum support price was devised. The Agriculture Prices Commission and Food Corporation of India came up in January 1965 to give a support to the farmers so that you cannot depend on imports of the basic essentials. And the Green Revolution, you can see, if Green Revolution had not come, the new technology had not come, what business as usual could have delivered and where we are. Rice also, again, on similar things. Main point that I want to hammer is that this was literally 100% government-led initiative along with the CIMET and ICRIER, the CGIER system from where they could get the seeds and get all the support. But the biggest revolution actually after the Green Revolution was the White Revolution. And White Revolution is the milk revolution. Just to give you one little example, in 1950-51, India's production of milk was 17 million tons when US was 53 million tons. Today, US production hovers around 100, 101, 102 million tons. India is at 220 million tons. 220 million tons from 17 million tons, where it has come. And the second spot, US, is at 102 million tons. And this is all done by the smallholders. We don't have farms of 100 cattle. It's a backyard, literally 2 or 3 or 4. And how this was done is a miracle and a lesson for many developing countries, smallholder economies to do that. But the point I want to emphasize is that this revolution also was led through cooperative movement, highly supported by the government. So from pure government in Green Revolution to cooperative led. But what had happened, the second slide here, CRISIL did a survey and they found there was a major change in policy in 2002 when the private sector was allowed to come and compete with the cooperatives. There's a lot of resistance from the cooperative leaders, but finally, Mr. Vajpayee, the Prime Minister at that time, took a call. He said complete delicensing, anybody can come and welcome. And it led to a double engine growth. You can see after that, the growth started. There is an inflection point there. And that led to. Today, this survey showed in different states that was done that organized private sector is procuring more milk than the cooperatives in the country. So it's a lot of transition and private sector emerging as a major player. The next revolution took place in cotton, from green to jean. The first BT cotton was introduced in 2002, again by Vajpayee government. In fact, the slogan that India used to have, Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, that is salutation to the soldier and salutation to the farmer, which was given in 1965, 66, when Lal Bahadur Shastri was the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, changed that slogan and said, Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, Jai Vigyan. Salutation to the soldiers, salutation to the farmers, and salutation to the scientists. It will be a science-led progress. And that's where he took a big decision of BT cotton, the only crop that we have in the country. And look at where business as usual would have gone, and India emerged as the largest producer of cotton and second largest exporter of cotton in the world from nowhere. That was all private sector led. Cotton revolution is all private sector led, literally government. The blip that you see in production later on is because government started intervening and started controlling the prices of seeds and this and that. The moment government gets into the business of controls, then you figure out, and they haven't approved the second generation of BT and all that fuss. But despite all that, look at where we could have been and where we are today. This is something people are not very well aware. People feel Indians are all vegetarians, as if I'm a vegetarian, but poultry revolution in the country, eggs and broiler, you look at the curve, how it has gone up, and this is all private sector led. The point where attention I want to draw is from the government to the cooperatives to the private sector. And this is likely to be the future. The strength of the private sector is coming up in a big way. So if government can streamline its policies and allow good participation of the private sector, there would be amazing results on Indian agriculture. And I do feel, and that's my assessment of 40 years working in this field, is that Indian agriculture can produce more than double of what it is producing today. What we need is investments, and that has to come from the private sector in a bigger way, and better incentive structures. That's where the negative support has to go off. The moment you go like China, support up, you will see the production flying and India will be able to feed. I met some students in the morning who are working on crop diversification. But the biggest diversification that has taken place in agriculture, you look at livestock, which used to be 13% of the value of output, to 20% to 30% today. I think this is the biggest diversification that has taken place. The NSS data gives by 2011, 63% of Indians are non-vegetarians. In fact, if you take only people above the age of 15, there are estimates that almost 75% of Indians are non-vegetarian. But the quantity is still less, and that may be related to the income, that may be related to a bit of religion, certain days they don't take, and so on and so forth, but all said and done. And then, of course, there is horticulture revolution, and I haven't presented those slides here, but there is a diversification process that is going on. How fast it could have gone, we will see, because of the wheat and rice story. That's all the MSP business and the PDS system and linked to that, and that is delaying the revolution towards high value agriculture. India over the last 20 years, even 2000 onwards, if I give you, has been a net exporter of agricultural produce. You can see, in fact, 21-22, our exports went to $51 billion. This is up to 2021. Last year, India exported more than 30 million tons of cereals, out of which 21 million ton was rice, which is 40% of the global trade. 40% of the global trade in rice was exported by India. So think about from ship to mouth situation in 60s to the largest exporter of rice in the world today. So there is a dramatic change, and I still feel our productivity levels can double up depending upon what sort of incentive structures we have. So this repurposing business, what is the problem? Why do we need it? It has still, despite the diversification that is taking place, there is some anchoring, and that is on the staples. Rice area, for example, over the last 20 years, if you look at, it is hovering between 43 to 45 million hectares. I feel rice can go down. China is producing from 29 million hectares more than what India produces rice. Their productivity levels are high because their minimum support price is 30% higher than us. So if you give that incentive to our farmers, you will see there'll be same rice or even more rice produced from lesser area, and that area can be then released towards high value agriculture and more diversified. The problem with rice in particular, more than in wheat, is its wet water guzzling. 1 kilogram of rice needs 3,000 to 5,000 liters of water, depending upon where you are growing. So even if you take 4,000 liters as an average, and if you think you have exported, 21 million tons of that, and even if you assume 50% of the water that is applied for irrigation percolates back to the groundwater, last year, India exported 42 billion cubic meters of water. That is, those who are working on the environmental side of this need to take care of it, because India is not usually surplus in water. India is extremely short of water. And a nation that is extremely short of water is exporting water through rice and sugar. Sugar, 1 kilogram of rice, sugar means 2,000 liters of water. And we exported about 10 million tons of sugar. So 20 billion cubic meters of this, and then this, you look at the huge, and that is because there are huge subsidies. Water is almost free. Power is almost free in many states. So you are pumping, and the result of that. And then there is a government mechanism to procure, at least in 5-6 states. So even if the country doesn't need, whatever your buffer stock norms are, you are procuring more than double, triple of that. That leads to economic inefficiency. Your PDS thing, the economics part of it needs to be looked at. Look at this, Punjab, which is the seat of Green Revolution. In 2021, the production was 12.78 million tons, but procurement of rice in Punjab was 13.5 million tons. That means they are not consuming anything, but how are they procuring even more than the production? Trains and trucks loaded come from Bihar and Eastern UP, where the prices are 25% below the minimum support price, to sell it here. And all this thing is being organized by the commission agents and aggregators and RTS. So there is a loop. And this is something I discovered when I was a part of the government, took up this matter even up to the prime minister level, but it hasn't been resolved. So there is, you look at even in wheat, production 17.18 and procurement was 13.2, but Uttar Pradesh, which produces 35 million tons of wheat, procures only 5.6. So the moment, and this is where the prices remain below the MSP. So MSP is not in a way implemented across the country. And if that is implemented, Bihar will be another Punjab because they will get 25% more and they'll start producing more, but then your diversification becomes a challenge. So you have to limit the procurement, how much you need and how much the government can procure. Wheat, I talked about Punjab, and this is the result. This is those who are working on environment. I hope this slide is clear. This is about 20 years data. The water table, how it is going down. This is meters below groundwater, how much it has depleted. 9.2 meters in Punjab in 20 years, water table has depleted. Within Punjab, if you look at different districts, the current chief minister comes from Sangrur district. The water table in the last 20 years has gone down by almost 25 meters. More than a meter a year, the groundwater table is going down. So these policies of MSP, high procurement, building up stocks are leading to this unsustainable nature of our food system. Land, overall of the geographical area, about 29.77%, 30% of India's land is degraded. With the population pressure that we have, and by next year we will surpass China's population and be the most populous country in the world, I think we may have to rejuvenate many of our so-called degraded lands in due course. That is one. And the reason for this degradation, the prime reason is water erosion. So when water is going down and people can't lift, if it goes down 400 feet, 300 feet, the cost increases. And if you don't get free electricity, the diesel is too expensive to do that. And something needs to be done on that. The carbon footprint. If you look at, this is what the agriculture generates, the carbon in total quantity, but as a percentage of the total, how much agriculture generates, it used to generate 28%. It is now 14.4%. That means other sectors are creating bigger carbon quantities. But within agriculture, it's primarily the livestock sector, and then followed by land use and paddy. I'll give you something interesting about paddy, which is linked to your PDS thing. Look at this. This is another study we have been doing for the last 1 year, trying to compute with my colleague, this is the forthcoming work, how much in different states, paddy growing states we have picked up, how much carbon footprint is there. And that is first time being measured, how much methane is generated when you have under different irrigation conditions, the flood irrigation with some aeration and all that. Then on top of that, how much of nitrogen you have applied. Nitrous oxide is actually 273 times the carbon equivalence. So you have to see how much of nitrogen is being applied. Interesting thing is the way we are doing, and that should come to the policy. Nitrogen use efficiency, the nutrient part is only 30 to 40%, 60% to 70% of what fertilizers you are applying through granular urea is either going into the atmosphere, creating nitrous oxide, or going into the groundwater, creating high nitrate content and damaging the environment and therefore the sustainability of the system. And highest is in this Punjab, Haryana belt, that's again. So all this hook on rice cultivation through MSP, through assured procurement, is creating environmental disaster in the seat of green revolution, which fed us, but now they will be facing this. That's where we need repurposing of support. The challenge, besides the environmental land and water and air, the challenge is also for India, which is unique still, and that is the malnutrition. India is out of the so-called food security in terms of availability, and perhaps also in terms of access with the highly subsidized or almost free to 800 million people of the basic staples. But on malnutrition front, underweight or stunting or wasting or women body mass index, all these, there is improvement, but it's a slow improvement. And this is where there is a paradox. There is a little debate going on right now in the country because global hunger index is released and India fares very poorly in that, and government has rejected the calculations of that global hunger index. Earlier, our national sample survey, the largest consumption survey, used to calculate how much is the calorie, and based on that, there used to be defined as a poverty line, but now it's the international poverty line. The latest by the World Bank, they have revised $2.15 per day per person, PPP 2017. Poverty has been falling, per capita income has been going up, but our calorie consumption as estimated by NSSO was either stagnant or marginally falling. And that is one of the reasons that the 16-17 survey that was done, government did not accept that. How can all these parameters are on improvement? And how do you say that you're silent? If you use the food balance sheet of the FAO, this is another methodology, and I think Prabhu was one of the persons in FAO at that time doing, and we thought of doing a work on missing calories. If you come from the FAO balance sheet, the calorie consumption of Indians average comes to 2581 today, roughly. Whereas NSSO, the last one, 2011, was showing 2000 or so. So where are these missing calories? Which is correct? The consumption surveys or the food balance sheet from production side that is coming up? Yeah. Status of child mortality. There is significant improvement. You look at from 88 to 32 and different, this is infant mortality rate or under 5 mortality rate. All those are showing good improvement. Why malnutrition numbers are still not showing as significant a progress as the other indicators are showing, and this is what for a minute you have to give attention. When you are saving people from dying, the mortality rates are coming down. You are adding to the malnourished pool, right? And the outflow from that pool is not as strong. So there is improvement, but this incoming flow is very, very fast because there is huge improvement in infant mortality rates. So once that stabilizes at a lower level, I feel in another 10 years, 15 years, you will see a dramatic change in this when the outflow. So that's what our reading is. This is another study we have done. But food is not the only thing in this. For malnutrition, there are many other issues, access to sanitation, access to immunization, and we found from the unit level data that we analyzed, women education beyond 12 years is one of the most critical factors to have access to that. That was a revealing thing to us. Economic efficiency of your public distribution system. The buffer stock norm is the dotted line, and the actual stocks went all the way double, more than double. And that leads to dead money locked in, the capital locked in. So this is what is happening on the economic sides besides the environmental disaster that you have there. Repurposing support. Today we have the technologies to really protect our environment, water, air, everything. You switch from flood irrigation to drip irrigation. There are last 8-9 years of experimentation going on in rice fields. Drip irrigation, Jan irrigation had been doing in Punjab and Haryana, and they could say 50% water can be saved, productivity can go up by 25%. And if you use fertigation, then you can save on fertilizers. But why will they adopt that type of technique when water is free, power is free, and urea is 90% subsidized? Who is interested? So I think the technologies to move into a situation which can still give you more from less damage and lesser use of your resources exist. But what is lagging behind is the policy framework, which has a legacy of the past of MSPs and government stocks and PDS and all that, which is locked in, which is creating a hurdle for diversification of crops particularly, because you need a different infrastructure for that. And that is where I think we need to move on. So all this, solar is another thing. Solar as a third crop. We have done quite a bit of work on that, and hopefully to augment the farmer's income. You can keep growing 2 crops underneath and still you can have solar, so that income from solar as a third crop can be generated. So even during drought or flood, when your other crops fail, solar will not fail. So it can stabilize your income, it can augment. In fact, the pilot that we did in Delhi, and there is adoption, government listened, and then we created a pilot, the income can be doubled in a single year. Income of the farmers can be doubled in a single year. And India is leading the International Solar Alliance with France, and India has committed 100 gigawatt to be produced power, from renewables, and particularly more from the solar. So solar has to be integrated as a part of farming. So that discussion and idea is being discussed, and hopefully it will be scaled up sooner or later. This is all protected in, you can see the protected part, tomatoes outside in the field and inside the protected cultivation, productivity is triple, 4 times. You have hydroponics, aeroponics, all sorts of technologies exist. But they need a supporting incentive structure, because it will need some capital, and that's where the support is needed. And that's what China did. You go to China and look at the protected cultivation, and massive things have come up. It's all through the highly subsidized capital investments. And once you do that, your production will go up. China, from a lesser cropped area, produces more than double of what India produces. And we have more cropped area, and we can definitely do more than double of what we are producing in the next 5 years, 10 years, provided the incentive structure changes. So this is, again, basically precision technologies. Organic through the nature, you can go back, but the productivity is lower, the pricing is higher, and in a poor country, how many people will afford that? There is scope and it is increasing, but I don't think, government has started off programs on zero budget natural farming, but that cannot be the solution for mass production and for the masses of India, which are still at a low level of income. So precision agriculture would be the answer. And that's where capital investments and incentives are needed. And that's where you need to repurpose the support system. Uberization of farm machinery, because these are smallholders, 1 hectare, they can't afford all these big things. So how can you create? And that's where digitalization of this work can help. If we can, in the urban areas, enjoy Uber, why can't farmers enjoy Uberization of farm machinery? Last slide. Innovations in technologies, more from less, very much there. Policy is lagging behind, and that's where we need to rethink about the current policies of what we call the freebies, huge subsidy, free food to more than 800 million people, or fertilizer, urea subsidy 90%. Do we need that really? If our poverty number hovers around 10%, 15%, you may give to 30% of population. Why do you need to give free food to 60%, 70%, 65% of the population? So those things are hard to change, but that's a political call, and that's where we are. Otherwise, it's difficult to get more resources into agriculture research and innovation systems. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you, Ashok, for a great seminar, great historical overview and showing us the way forward. There's a bunch of questions on chat,
Sure.
but maybe we'll start from questions in the room. Yeah, all the way in the back. Sure.
It is really for last 5 years listening to Prabhu, learning from Prabhu, the same thing, how the policy needs to be transparent and we need more of the diversification going from the staple to non-staple.
Mhm.
And hearing you, it definitely gives a positive hope that it is we're on the path, but it will take time. My only coming from India, understanding the whole political landscape over there, how optimistic you are when the whole Indian political call goes by the vote-driven kind of mentality, and it is all the freebies is being introduced every day, the free food, the ahar, and also, so how optimistic you are? How
Revdi culture. It's called the Revdi culture, the freebies. You know, it's a little downside of the democratic society. We wrote about this about 6-7 months ago on this, time to put it on the table and discuss it. I'm very happy the Supreme Court picked it up and they have asked the Election Commission to look into this. Almost all opposition parties are against it since the time Prime Minister mentioned Revdi culture in some states. My feeling is after a lot of discussion and debate, we may come to some agreement that what is real welfare augmenting thing and what is just a bribe for votes, right? And if we can resolve that, it's not going to be easy because all the parties need to come together. But the very fact from nowhere, Supreme Court asked the Election Commission, now the engagement process. But remember, India is a debating society. So it will take time, but I hope we will find a way out.
Definitely, I think
So you were mentioning about the negative support for the farmers, and positive support for the consumers, but can we really distinguish consumers from farmers? A part of that, farmers are also consumers?
Sure, there are. I mean, if you look at 800 million people, they're not all consumers or non-farmers. There are farmers who are very small farmers and all that. But broadly, I would say if you have Aadhaar card, right, you identify how much in this Aadhaar card support is coming from different levels, right? And if you switch, you want to support somebody, you decide whether 30% of the population needs a support or 20% of the population needs a support. You can give them direct income support. Let them buy what they want to do. If they want to consume egg, why do you stop that? Why are you forcing them to eat? You are giving rice back to the rice farmers. He is producing rice. And you are giving rice back to him. He says, my heavens, you are giving me free. Okay, I'll give and submit you back into the procurement. So it's a madness going on. So we need to switch from this rice and wheat system to a system which gives you a choice. And one of the ways of doing that is income support.
Let's take the question from the web.
So one of our one webinar I'd like to know, would also like to see how India is faring versus similar or developed countries in terms of ag policy and farmer return.
So this was when you were showing the OECD examples. I think the question was, what about similar countries like India?
Yeah, we have 52 countries. To us, the biggest challenge and comparison is with China. Because China in 81, even up to 91, the per capita income was below India. And now it's 4 times, 5 times ahead of us. And my study, I've done literally 2 books on India and China comparison. The Dragon and the Elephant, you can find Johns Hopkins. China's reform process started with agriculture. They dismantled the commune system and they liberated their agriculture markets, and the farmers' real incomes went by 14% per annum for 78 to 84. And that created a huge demand for industrial goods and manufacturing revolution. So to me, compare India with China and look at their support system, look at their MSPs, they are 30% higher, right? Now, if we raise our MSP by 30%, farmers would be damn happy and you will see the production burst, in a big way. But what will happen to consumers? Those who are poor. And that's where I think we need to switch towards income support and differentiate that. If we do that, I think we are doing better than many of the countries in the region. But since India's population is way more than any of the neighboring countries, I think our real comparison will be with China.
But Ashok, on the nutrition front, we are not doing better than most countries.
I told you, when you are saving millions from dying, this is only a matter of time. So you see the drop in the infant mortality, and there would be a time, very fast reduction in nutrition numbers will come. But yes, all said and done, right now, nutrition improvement is a very slow process, especially on the wasting side. Stunting, there is some improvement. Underweight, there is improvement. It can be better. And policies need to now move from food security, so-called, to nutritional security. So that's another repurposing thing.
Yeah, so right now it's in policies about what to produce, like rice and wheat and municipal. So what do you think transitioning from what to support to, what to produce to how to produce? So there are some environmental standards, for example, and then if you produce by those standards, you're going to be rewarded. However, if you damage the environment, you're going to be penalized. So do you think there is a...
Penalization is not possible, but
that's my follow-up.
Question is, this is the bar. This is what they are doing, and this they feel is their entitlement. So they can burn stubble despite the law says you can't do that, but you can't put thousands of farmers into jail, and governance structure, and that becomes a very political issue.
I was thinking more penalizing about not being able to access to future subsidies rather than putting.
Oh, there will be a revolt in the system. This is where democracy is very different from the Chinese system. They can bulldoze reforms. You can't. And the only way is show them a better carrot. Okay, we are giving you $30 billion of fertilizer subsidy. Or, today more than 1 lakh crore is on the power subsidy. Let's say, if you save power by 25% or you save water by 25%, you will get this reward. 80%, because government will be saving that power subsidy. Government is saving water. So you will be rewarded for this carbon credit or water footprint, which you can minimize. So that's the way to go, because wherever we are, that they feel is their right. If you want to punish and say, no, you can't do this, in democracy, that's where politics comes. So you can only improve that this carrot I'll give you, but you do these things, and then lure him onto the other side. And that's where innovation and policies is needed. And how do you do it without too much of leakages in the system? That's what.
So this question sort of makes reference to Sri Lanka's recent economic downturn being tied to going organic. What's your view of organic agriculture's growth in India in the long run with its increasing population?
My first take on that is farmers should have the freedom to go anyway, the way they want to. So long as the technology is safe, farmers should have full freedom to grow organic. If he can make more money through organic, please let him do that. State policy that we will not allow chemical fertilizers. That's what Sri Lanka did. And that's a blunder. I don't think if India does that, tomorrow we'll be back to ship to mouth situation. And India cannot afford that with the size of population. Sri Lanka is not even one state of India, the population size. And India with 1.4 billion people has to produce more. And I don't think there is any substitute that you can replace chemical fertilizers with farmyard manure, or one of our friends was doing some work I met in the morning from human waste. No way, it can be just 5% of the game, 7% of the game, upper limit 10% of the game. Because what we looked at, the natural farming and this organic thing, productivity drops by anywhere from 30 to 50%. Now, some other people claim no, in horticulture it is doing much better, but ICR's own results on rice and wheat show 30 to 50% drop in productivity. You can't afford that. So you cannot allow the production of the basic staples of the country, which is the so-called food security in terms of availability, to go down. That's not possible. But yes, even 5%, 10% of the game is a huge number in India. And if there are people who can buy, sure, why not?
First of all, excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Obviously, it's very complex. No simple answer in India. I spent 30 years in South Asia, so I have a little bit of knowledge of India. But and also, there's many stakeholders involved.
Yep.
Many stakeholders. I'm an agronomist, so I was working with the national program scientists, looking at ways to produce more with less.
Yep.
Less water, less fertilizer, more efficient use of fertilizer, storage losses, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But the problem is scaling it up.
Yep.
How do we scale it up? We need incentives not only for the farmers to adopt, but we also need incentives for the researchers and extension people to work with the farmers to encourage them, give them incentives to adopt this new technology. And so I was really glad to see at the end that you mentioned technology. But what do you see in the future? I mean, you've got so many small farmers. The average farm size is what, 2 hectares?
One, less than one now. 1.08 was in 2015-16 census.
So you've got millions of farmers. What do you see happening in the future to make, to scale up and get the adoption of these technologies that already exist?
Yes. My take on this, I'm still very optimistic on this. How to scale at small level pilots, we have shown what can be done. How to scale it up, you need tweaking in the incentive structures. One little example I'll give you, and that's what I've been writing and hitting and hammering time and again on that with the government. You are giving free food. $36 billion literally this year's budget. Agriculture, research and development, ICRIER budget is $1 billion and it is stuck at that for the last 5 years literally. $1 billion. And you have all the money to give free food. Unless you put money in science. So I've been, in my last article on 16th of October 17th, it was exactly on this, that what saved India was science. Unless you put in more in science and innovations, you need to double, triple at least that much money, part of extension, part of new innovative ideas coming up and scaling up at different times. this is a battle I'm fighting as I speak right now. And hopefully, let's see where we go, because this freebie culture will not allow to get the society on the right track. And if you keep on giving these freebies, nobody values. So that's the problem. So that's where scaling up becomes a problem. But some private people are coming in this game. Some voluntary carbon markets have started coming up because they have CSR funds and something will start. I think even if we show one district, one block, where a total transformation can be done, and the Prime Minister comes and visits that, hopefully the policies will start changing. That's a battle for us.
Excellent. Two questions.
The returns on agriculture R&D is 5 to 10 times more than on subsidies like fertilizer or power or others. And that we have been discussing with the government. So, sorry.
I think this is the perfect timing for my question, because you just said that what saved us was science. So my question is centered around technological reform. So you talked about green revolution and how we adopted this new technology to address the issues then, but what we see now is that it has led to some problems which you were talking about, whether it is degradation of environment or water tables. And we are not equipped right now how to address these issues and how to handle these problems. And now again we are talking about repurposing support for sustainable purposes, which basically means we are talking about new technological innovation to address the issues now, which again might lead to some problems in future, 20 years down the line. So how do we understand this? And second, I want to know your opinion on institutional reform, because since I started studying Indian economy, I've been told about this green revolution, technological reform, and the debate between technological reform versus institutional reform. So I just
Okay, good.
because it was not there in the.
I'm glad that you mentioned institutional reform, and that also is a supplementary question on the smallholder size and how to scale up. Dairy is a wonderful example. It's all smallholders, and they have done wonders. Look at US was 3 times ahead of us, 17 versus 53, and today we are more than double of US. It's all done by the smallholders. So the innovation is not just in technologies, it was institutional engineering, putting these people together. What was the technology? Lactometer, the simplest technology, right? So we can do wonders with different innovations. Now your question, that innovations of today will lead to some problems tomorrow. Well, that's the history of Homo sapiens all along. You will never be free of any problems. Problems will always be there, but we are continuing up. It took Homo sapiens 2 lakh to 3 lakh, 200,000 to 300,000 years to reach 1 billion in 1804. The next billion on this planet was added in 123 years by 1927. After that, we are adding 1 billion every 35 years, and 15 years, 14 years, and we have fed them. There is ample food. It is access to food, which is the question. But food is there.
So I've been told we have 3 minutes left before this cuts off. So I'm going to do one last question. The rest of you can ask questions during the lunch.
So my question is based on the fact you seem to say that the way forward to increase productivity is to privatize agriculture. So I was just thinking about how does that fit into the age-old question of equity versus growth, as in what will happen to the poor farmers? Will they be displaced if the private firms come in to this agricultural scene? How will they lose their livelihood? What is going to happen to them?
Number one, agriculture is the biggest private sector enterprise. These are farmers, and they choose what they want to do. Only way government can intervene is provide some incentive, MSP, procurement, fertilizer subsidy. So they are, in a way, intervening into a system which is already private. Now, why did you intervene? Because the nation was facing a problem. You wanted quick results. and therefore you introduce these things. But they stuck with you. We are not in 1965, right? Why do we need fertilizer subsidy of that amount? India is not 75% poor, they can't afford food. If you have poverty 10%, 12%, well, give it to 25%, 30% people. Why do you need to give to 67% free food? What is going on in the country? This is all politics of freebies. Okay? So question is, it is the private sector. The milk revolution is by the farmers and the man who got them together. Right? More private sector investment has to come in for the ecosystem to get the best out of farmers. If I produce potatoes and I don't have storage capacity and government doesn't allow, why will I produce? So the perishables, particularly the high value agriculture, needs a very different type of infrastructure. Government can never build that. Government should regulate and incentivize, if at all at the margin, but allow the Essential Commodities Act. At the drop of a hat, government says you cannot store, get it out within a week, everything that you have in your storage, otherwise you are behind the bars. That is what Essential Commodity Act is. Who is going to put investment in storage if it is going to lie empty? Grain storage, pulses storage were holding bottles of whiskey later on. You can't. So you need to clean up because the canvas has changed. We are not in the shortages of 1965. But the policies have not changed. So historical legacy, and there are people who have been benefiting from those policies. So there are stakeholders and vested interests and rent seekers in that game. So it becomes difficult to change, but it has to.
On that note, let's all thank Ashok for a wonderful.